Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one! Another one! Another one!
Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's gonna go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Worked out by Burke. Bounces into Cody, puts it up, scores!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome in. It's Thursday. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you as we do every day. Jim Coyle here. Dustin Schutte with me as always from Saturday Tradition. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. We're about to dive headfirst into a full slate of Big Ten football and conference games. No more of this non-conference stuff. So I'm excited. How are you?
Ready to get at it, man. It's going to be a great day, a great show lined up, man. As always, Matt Taylor join us. We talk about the Colts woes. That is a situation that don't know how that's going to get, how much better that's going to get. Of course, our good friend Chris Denari from the Pacers. Catch up on them. They had IU. They had media day on Monday, the same day that IU had media day, and IU football press conferences couldn't get up to there. So look forward to talking to him about that. Then we're going to have Jason Stahl, and he is the director of the College Football Players Association, and this is something that he has been building, and now this takes on a whole new meaning after yesterday's memo from the National Labor Relations Board, which is an independent federal agency that in essence said student athletes are employees of these universities. And man, that might be bigger than NIL.
Yeah.
It's definitely going to cost the schools more money than NIL.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the nuts and bolts of it, but it was a huge development, I know, coming out of Wednesday. And I mean, everything's changing, and we've talked about this multiple times, and it's all changing at once. So it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of affects things moving forward. But I mean, this is uncharted territory. This is something, I don't know about you, Jim. This is something never even crossed my mind when we were talking about NIL stuff, because the players weren't technically working for the school or receiving money from the school. I didn't ever think of it as them being classified as employees, but clearly
they're still not. But that's been a fight that's gone on.
Right.
Some Northwestern guys tried to do this a few years back.
Yep. It
wasn't rejected, but it was just not taken up. It's like the Supreme Court sometimes does not take a case. The NLRB just did not pick it up at that time, but now they have, or at least there's a memo.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's going to be fascinating to see how this thing moves forward and player empowerment. And from what I understand, that this is another step closer to potentially having some sort of unionization or among players.
Exactly what it is.
Yeah,
it's exactly what it referenced. It's stated that they have the ability to unionize.
And that's crazy, because that's what they were talking about. That's exactly what they were. People out of Northwestern, Caden Coulter, the quarterback there, he was one of the guys that was leading that front. And there were a few other, I can't remember who it was, but that's basically what they were doing. They wanted to unionize and talk about, address some of the concerns that they had about, at the time, NIL and unfair treatment and things of that nature, things they thought they should be receiving as student athletes or quote unquote employees of the school. So it's really interesting. I mean, it's crazy to think that here we are 7-8 years later, and it finally gets picked up, and it just so happens to be coming at this time of this wave of transformation in college athletics, where you have the stuff with the transfer portal and immediate eligibility, and you have stuff with NIL and players able to make money. And now the even bigger thing too is you're seeing more players at the high school level. You're starting to see them leave their senior year of high school. We've seen another player, I believe a Florida commit, has left high school early to go join a school. So it's just another thing that has changed the landscape of college football and college athletics in just such a short period. I mean, this has all happened in like 8 months.
Well, yeah, now and with the advent of this, if and they will unionize or they will come together in some form unless schools jump out in front of it and try to offer something as an appeasement. But I don't know that I think that I don't see that happening. But no, the unionizing, I'm not saying I don't see that happening. I definitely, that's a definitive thing. And now you think of things like workers' compensation.
Yep. And healthcare. And
if you get hurt, well, the athletes have that already, basically, in essence.
Well, they do, but I think probably the bigger thing is them wanting health care after their time or for a certain amount of years afterwards. If I get injured when I'm a player, then the school takes care of me, the athletic department takes care of me. But what happens if I have a lingering knee issue, 50 years down the road, or whatever the case might be? So that has always been one of the forefront of some of these student athletes who have kind of proposed that they want, better opportunities isn't the right word, but they want better coverage. That long-term healthcare, especially with the focus and the emphasis on concussion protocol and mental health and that sort of stuff. When we're talking about football, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that they want, some sort of long-term solution for, because not every employer that these student athletes are going to have down the road is going to have that type of coverage or have that have those same sort of resources that these schools and universities have. So there's just so many different intricate details, but I mean, yeah, workers' compensation, potentially long-term healthcare. I mean, there's just so many different things that could come into play here that's why it's going to be so interesting to me, because it's just such a new concept and such a new idea. I mean, those guys in 2014, I saw this on Twitter multiple times. Those guys back then were ahead of their time. And it just took 7 or 8 years for this to get the ball finally rolling, but we're heading in that direction. That's for sure.
Well, and then Ross beat me to getting to this point, but it's not like these guys, and it depends on where people think that the athletes are starving and they're not getting anything. Well, that's not quite true. So now, though, when you go to a Harvard or you play for an Ivy League school or another school, whether it's Indiana, the value of these scholarships, the value of that medical care, the value of the food, lodging, transportation, well, not transportation because that's part of the games, but how is all of that going to be factored in? I remember saying once this stuff started, it was the end of college athletics as we know it. And it is, because it's going to open up 15 different channels of different things that are going on, dealing with stuff. Now the students are going to have their own accountants and CPAs.
Yep.
What counts as, if they're going to be considered employees, then how does that scholarship not count as taxable income?
Well, I guess my question would be, how is it different than if I have a scholarship to go to school, an academic scholarship, and then I get a job with the school working in like a resource room or like a writing lab or something along those lines? I mean, does that fall under the same category? I legitimately don't have the answer to that question, because I'm doubting that if that becomes the case for an academic scholarship, I'm guessing that scholarship is not taxed. So I don't know.
Why? It's income. If
I'm
they're
just
an
saying,
employee,
I'm just saying I don't know how it works. So that's my question. I legitimately
the
don't
government sees
know.
anything you get as a benefit taxable, basically.
Well, I mean,
if it has a monetary value,
right,
and a degree at a Big Ten school is a gigantic monetary value.
So
especially, or not a degree, a scholarship at a Big Ten school, an athletic scholarship, an all-encompassing. that covers the medical care. That covers all that stuff. The medical value on that is pretty damn high.
Right.
And it's not like they're going to be able to reap the benefits and ignore the rest of the things that the rest of the world has to do. They can't make money and not pay taxes on the benefits that they're getting to pay that. So it's going to be, they're going to have to understand it's not going to be just all coming in for them.
Well, right. And that's going to be a huge thing. That's, to me, that's more NIL. I legitimately don't know how you can tax the scholarships. I don't know how that would look or how that would work.
If they become an employee, that's how.
But
it's a benefit.
Do we know anybody? I worked in college and I didn't have any. I mean, I had taxes taken out, but in terms of I didn't have a scholarship, so it didn't affect me.
We'll talk today. Jason Stahl, the director of the College Football Players Association, we'll talk to him later in the show, and we'll talk to him about that. This is something he would probably be closer to. And then tomorrow, I may get our attorney Alex Robbins on. To talk about this. More about it. Of course, that won't help you any, but unless you want to join the show tomorrow, you're free to. You say you're free tomorrow?
I can listen to the show tomorrow.
Or you can join us for that segment.
Or we can do that.
But yeah, I'll try to get Alex Robbins on and talk about that on that end of it, because that is that's going to be a big deal, man. You think about a 4-year scholarship.
Yeah, you're probably talking in the range of $120,000 to $160,000 minimum, depending on where you're going.
Oh my! An Indiana scholarship is more than that. Oh yeah, 40,000.
I'm thinking 40,000, but I don't know how much is room and board and the meal plan, all that little stuff. I don't know how much that equates to.
But can you imagine? All right, imagine playing at an Ivy League school.
And see, here's the other question though: are there different rules for that because those are private institutions? That's another question I have. I legitimately don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out there because I have no idea. Yeah.
You think I know?
Well, you're smarter than I am, so
I look like a tax expert here. I promise you. I believe Jennifer. How
is she a tax?
Jennifer needs to dig into that. Would a college scholarship be taxable if they are deemed to be employees? I don't see how it's not. So, but we'll talk more about that later with Jason Stahl from the College Football Players Association when he joins us. Isaiah Thomas coming to Hoosier Hysteria on Saturday, expected to speak to the crowd. You can already see a change. Well, I've already seen it, but for fans, this is another example of that. And where I want to say Indiana is regaining its basketball program.
Look
for a break. Let me take a quick break and get out of here. We'll talk about that more. Matt Taylor is going to come up and join us next from the Colts. We're back with Matt right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Hey, Hoosier fans. Matt, are you on there?
Yo.
Can you see that?
That's it.
I feel like you're giving away his address by doing that.
Oh, shit. Well, I'm just saying
Nope,
it is
I'm going to go visit Matt now.
Finally.
I'm going to drive to his house.
Yeah, I'm going to have like a party at my house now. Thanks.
He's going to come back from the game on Sunday, and there's going to be a backyard barbecue going on.
Yeah, there's going to be like a bunch of pitchforks, people doing like wheelies in my yard. Thing. Yeah. Why do you have my address?
That's what I was sending you. It took me all that long to finally get that into the stupid mail.
Oh, well, thank you.
So it's a little heavy.
It's a little heavy.
They fell down. There was 4 of them, and they fell down the freaking.
By the way, Jason I confirmed he can join us at 10:20, so we're good with him.
Hey, how about that, Matt? I've got this guy coming on later that is the director of the College Football Players Association, but the NRLRB thing yesterday. How about that?
I didn't see it. I don't know what that means.
Their general counsel, the National Labor Relations Board, is an independent federal agency, and their general counsel issued a memo basically saying that college athletes should be able to unionize and be afforded the benefits as employees.
Afforded what, though?
Just considered to be an employee
I don't agree with that.
of the universities. College athletes in revenue-producing sports at private universities are employees of their schools and should be afforded statute labor protections, national labor laws, blah, blah, blah.
So we got to give them a 401k for playing football? Is that it?
But see, this says distinctly at private universities.
I mean, they get paid vacation too? Is that, I mean.
Well, that's the question. Well, my question was, does their scholarship now become taxable?
Whatever happened to just lining up and playing a 3-4 defense and keeping somebody in front of you?
That's over. It is now the NFL light.
All right, here we go. Coming back.
And I know you'll continue to be there for whatever my future holds. Because you're my BFF. Banking friends forever.
Right now, get free checking with online banking. And all the products of big city banks with hometown service.
With First Federal, you can do that.
This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back. Make sure you head out to Southern Stone, especially Saturday after Hoosier Hysteria. You can watch the Penn State game there. Whether it's a celebration or just a relaxing night away from the kitchen, try something fresh and new. Southern Stone Restaurant, located at the corner of Rogers and Patterson, right in Bloomington, open for lunch and dinner. Southern Stone offers comfort food with a Southern charm. Enjoy the outdoor patio or inside with a view. Southern Stone has incredibly great food, knowledgeable bartenders, and you can catch the IU football and basketball coaches shows there each week at Southern Stone Restaurant, Rogers and Patterson. Brought to you, bringing you Matt Taylor from the Colts. Matt, how are you, brother?
What's going on, Jim?
Lots of it, man. Football's underway deep into the 4 weeks into the NFL season, where it was like 7 weeks into the high school season. Week 5 for the college football season. We were waiting, and we're a month in, man.
We're a month in, and unfortunately, the Colts are still waiting on that first win. It's been a grueling part of the season, or I should say start to the season for the Colts. Certainly, I mean, the schedule's been incredibly difficult, but no excuses. I mean, I think no one saw 0-3 for the Colts, considering how much continuity they had coming back from last year. But again, not to make excuses, but a lot has gone wrong for this team. Basically, anything that could go wrong has gone wrong in terms of injuries and bad luck and the quarterback situation and just not executing. And the Colts have themselves to blame for that. So there's a lot to get into, I'm sure. But 0-3 is 0-3. That old Bill Parcells line, you are what your record says you are. And the Colts feel like they're a good 0-3 team, but 0-3 is 0-3. And unfortunately, right? I mean, going back to 1980, there's only been 4 teams that have gone on to make the playoffs since, or I should say in the 12-team format since 1980. Only 4 teams that started 0-3 went on to make the playoffs. So it's an uphill climb right now, and 0-4 would be a pretty steep mountain to climb over. So they got to get this win coming up on Sunday. It's on the road, second of 3 on the road for the Colts against the Dolphins. And dare I say, I know the math doesn't say it is, but I think in all reality, it's a must-win game coming up on Sunday.
Yeah, and the Dolphins, I can't really get a good read on them. They beat the Bengals in preseason. That doesn't mean a lot. But then they get a win up in New England. They lose horribly at home to the Buffalo, 36-0, getting shut out. Then they go on the road and give Oakland all they want before they lose in overtime. So they're kind of a up and down looking team.
Yeah, I mean they're 1-2, but the thing under Flores, their head coach, he's a New England guy, so they're going to scrap, they're going to claw, and they're going to be in every game. But yeah, I mean the scouting report on them offensively, I mean you look at it, they are only averaging about 15 points per game. They're 30th in scoring, and that came with 28 points last week in overtime against the Raiders, as you said. They're 30th in passing right now at 175 per game. They've got a new quarterback in Jacoby Brissett, the former Colts quarterback. He's playing now for the injured Tua Tagovailoa, who's got a rib issue. He's on IR. They have only 4 passing plays on the year over 20 yards on the season. That's dead last, and that's sort of in line with how Jacoby plays the game. I mean, we saw that when he was in a Colts uniform. He did not push the ball down the field. He's a very deliberate passer. He's not going to turn the ball over. He's not going to kill you that way. But on the same or on the flip side of the coin, I should say, he is not going to burn you deep, so to speak. The offensive line can be had as well. They've given up 18 tackles for loss in the season. They've allowed 10 sacks. And then defensively, their numbers aren't great on that side of the ball either. 27th against the rush, not great against the pass. They've allowed a whopping 16 passing plays over 20 yards on the season. And then situationally, they're not good in the red zone. And they're also dead last in the NFL in third down defense, giving up a conversion rate at around 59%. So this is a very beatable team, obviously, but right now the Colts just have to focus on doing the little things themselves, and that's just, not beating themselves, having better technique on defense, executing better on offense, and getting healthy, quite frankly, because last week, as we saw, Carson Wentz played the game on 2 bad ankles, and for only the second time in his career, he did not have a rushing attempt, and scrambling and extending plays and maneuvering in the pocket. That's a big part of his game that just wasn't on display last week, obviously, because of his health. And so they got to get right in all those different areas coming up this weekend. And again, it's a very, very important game and a must-win game because the Colts have to win it. 0-4, I don't think it's going to get you in the playoffs here in 2021.
Yeah, and the thing is, Matt, that I noticed is the other day the Colts released their injury report, and you've got 7 starters out and 3 more who are limited in practice. And when you're talking about potentially, you have to, in a desperate situation, go down to Miami and try to get a win. I mean, this injury bug is almost unreal, not just for the Colts, but you throw the Pacers in there too. It seems like something's in the water in Indianapolis. But just do you get the sense of, do you think guys are trying to come back too early or because this has been a problem since really training camp? I mean, there's been issues with the injury bug, or is it just a string of bad luck for the Colts so far?
Yeah, I'm not smart enough to know the answer to that. I think it's just a string of bad luck. I think it's all coincidence, but you're exactly right. It's been a theme all season long, dating back to the start of training camp, right? I mean, the second or third day of camp, Wentz goes down, then Nelson the next day goes down with the same injury. They have to have the same surgery, a day apart by the same doctor. I mean, you kind of just start from there, and then their starting center, Ryan Kelly, had a hyperextended elbow. He missed a lot of camp. Eric Fisher was on PUP rehabbing from an Achilles injury, and now Quentin Nelson. I mean, Nelson's had a hellacious time here. I mean, if you look at it, in the offseason, he had 2 different surgeries, then the third surgery for the foot that I just talked about. He's had a nagging back issue. He's on COVID. Now he's dealing with an ankle injury. I mean, that's a crap load of stuff to deal with for a big fellow like that, and he's gutted through all of it. He's played through all of it, hasn't missed a start, rarely goes out. And his streak of 54 straight games playing and starting, that's in question. That's the second longest active streak of any NFL offensive lineman in the league. So not having him out there in all likelihood Sunday, that's going to be an issue. Same thing with Braden Smith. Looks like he's got at least another shot to miss a game this weekend, dealing with a strained foot. He's missed the last 2 games. It's kind of iffy right now on Kwity Paye. They're starting defensive end. Looks like they're going to have some guys miss in the back end potentially. Rock Yassin didn't practice. Kari Willis didn't practice. They're starting safety. It's been a revolving cast of characters on that injury list. Dustin, you're exactly right. It seems like as soon as one guy comes back, 2 more go on. And that's just been the constant reality of this team in terms of injuries. And so, Carson Wentz talked about that yesterday. It just seems like every practice, every game is a new chance for he and the offense to continue to get to know each other because they just haven't had a ton of opportunities to do so all together with all their starters on the field at the same time, dating back to training camp. It's either Carson's out or offensive linemen are out or both at the same time. So it's definitely been a work in progress in terms of continuity with a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterback, and obviously some new pieces up front along that offensive line being intermixed primarily because of injuries and guys being banged up so far this season.
And it brings me to wonder almost, at what point are the Colts better to – you always want your best players on the field, right? I mean, nobody's ever going to argue against that. But at what point is it better to maybe give another quarterback a shot? Or at what point is it better to maybe rest a guy for a week to make sure that they're fully healthy for the next season? I know that they need to win. They're in a desperate situation here. And you talk about the playoff statistics about teams who start 0-3. But I just wonder, is it better long-term? Or do the Colts even have a better shot to have somebody on the field who's 100% as opposed to, a Jonathan Taylor who's 75% or somebody else who's 65% or whatever the case might be? I just wonder if you're going to see some sort of changes to get this team, at least try to get them healthy for the last 12 games of the season.
No, it's a great question, and I think it was very applicable last week. I think the Colts were asking themselves that question last week as it pertains to Carson Wentz, and they were sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place with Wentz because it appeared early in the week that he had no shot to play with those two sprained ankles, and the ankle sprain on his right leg was much worse than his left leg, according to him. But it was a huge division game and a road game, and I would probably argue the most important road game of the season for the Colts, because, again, it's your chief AFC South rival. It's going to be a two-horse race to win the division between the Colts and the Titans, and those head-to-head matchups are going to have so much weight in deciding who wins the division come January time and who makes the playoffs and things like that. And so they knew it was a really, really important game. Plus, you're coming off 0-2, and you don't want to be 0-3 because of the statistics that we already talked about. And so I thought the Colts were in a really difficult predicament because this is Carson Wentz's team, and they've made no bones about that. He is the starting quarterback. He's the guy for the future. They're trying to build around him, and if he could play, which he obviously ultimately did at whatever percent, he was 70, 80%, whatever it was, they felt like he gave them the best chance to win still over a guy like Jacob Eason or Brett Hundley, who ultimately wound up being the backup quarterback that day on Sunday in Nashville. So it was a pretty difficult decision to make. I think Carson helped make the decision for them by throwing the kitchen sink at his ankles and miraculously getting into a position where he could play and gut it out on Sunday. That being said, though, the game plan, as we all saw, was completely different in week 3 than it was in the first 2 weeks. What they could call was different. How they could execute was different. As I said, the scrambling wasn't there. He got the ball out of the pocket faster. But, Tennessee knew that, and they were blitzing hard. They were blitzing up the middle. And, you guys saw, he threw several balls in the dirt to avoid sacks. He just played completely different. And so they think they can win like that until he's fully healthy. But to your point, you're exactly right. The catch-22 is he's not fully healthy, and every time he goes out there in practice or games, he runs the risk of diminishing his health. Whereas the other side of the coin is, hey, let's just rest you until you're completely healthy and you're ready to go. But then you're running out somebody else at quarterback that doesn't have the experience, that doesn't know the playbook nearly as good as Carson Wentz. And then, if it's a week or two, maybe you're 0-4, 0-5, and then you're in a serious hole. So right now, again, just can't reiterate enough. The Colts are really in a tough position, a rock and a hard place as it pertains to health and their quarterback, and desperately trying to win games.
And then how about the oddity, Matt, of going down to Miami, and the quarterback that they'll be facing is Jacoby Brissett?
It is Jacoby Brissett, the former Colts quarterback, as we'd said, and he's playing for the injured Tua, and he had over 30 starts with the Colts. We kind of know who he is as a quarterback. He's a fantastic guy. He has great intangibles, great leader, very respected. And again, the book on Jacoby is that he is not going to turn the football over. He's not going to kill you. He's always going to keep you in games. He's very deliberate. But he's, I remember talking to Nick Sirianni, the offensive coordinator for the Colts at the time in 2019, when Jacoby started all year for Andrew Luck, who retired before that season. And I remember asking Nick at the time, where is Jacoby right now? Where does he need to get better? Things like that. What's the improvement you need to see? And he said it's decision making. Not that Jacoby doesn't, read defense as well. He's a very smart guy, but it's just reading them faster, anticipating things quicker, and then accuracy. He's got good accuracy, but it's not elite level accuracy like you see, from a Phillip Rivers last year for the Colts, or a Tom Brady, or a Peyton Manning. I mean, it's good, but he tends to at times to shy away from trying to put the football into tight windows. He needs to see receivers open before he pulls the trigger. And so I think the Colts know him well, and obviously the same works in reverse. I think the big indicator on who has the leg up in this matchup as far as that goes is I think the Colts, if they just sit back and they don't do anything game plan specific for Jacoby, which obviously will not happen, but I'm just saying hypothetically, if they just sit there and they play their defense and they play that zone that Jacoby has seen a million times and has grown accustomed to in practice against the Colts defense, he's good enough to pick them apart. Now, that being said, the Colts again will make some subtle tweaks to make sure they do some things defensively that'll confuse Jacoby, or maybe play to his weaknesses with him at quarterback. But it's going to be a really good matchup, and obviously Jacoby's a good guy. Always liked him inside the Colts locker room. Wish him well outside of Sunday, but going to be an interesting matchup. Both teams need a win desperately because Miami last year, they were 10-6, and they are kind of teetering out of the playoff picture like the Colts. So it's must win for both teams coming up this weekend.
Speaking of Tua, his brother is killing it at Maryland, man. Looks a lot like Tua.
Yeah, I haven't seen him play. I mean, I saw him play last year, but not so far this year with Maryland. But it's funny. You look at their offense, Miami, that is, with Tua out there, and just watching a little bit of film so far this week, the Dolphins on offense with him out there, they look like an NCAA team. They look like Alabama running their offense. It's all shotgun and clapping and RPO and everything side to side. Whereas with Jacoby out there, it looks like the Colts offense from a couple of years ago. So completely different schemes, completely two different skill sets for the different quarterbacks. And so the Colts know it well. But I mean, if you look at what Brissett's doing, I mean, a career 59% passer, again, shows hesitancy to push the ball down the field. And with him at quarterback, Miami has been outscored 52-28 in 7.5 quarters with Brissett at quarterback, which means, they're still trying to figure some things out and build some continuity, just like the Colts.
And Matt, before we get you out of here, we've talked a lot about the Colts 0-3 start and the injuries and a lot of doom and gloom, right? But I want to ask your opinion, getting through these first 3 games, has there been a player or a couple players who have stood out to you that have maybe been pleasant surprises or playing better than maybe what you expected coming into this season?
No, absolutely. Michael Pittman and Nyheim Hines. Pittman on offense at the receiver position. I mean, he's been targeted 24 times in the last 2 games, and he has 190 receiving yards in the last 2 games. So without T.Y. Hilton, who's still on IR, by the way, he's eligible to come off this week, but he's not going to. Still has that neck injury. Without him in the lineup, Michael Pittman has emerged as the go-to target for the Colts, and he's made some really important contested catches. I can think of some third down important catches to extend drives and keep the Colts in games. So he's one, and then Hines is the other. And I think in the offseason, the Colts thought to themselves, we need to make a concerted effort to get the ball to Nyheim Hines more. In the first week, he had 15 touches. Last week, he had 14 touches. He's had at least 80 scrimmage yards in 2 of the 3 games. Last year, he went over 80 scrimmage yards just twice. So they're giving him the ball a lot more, and they're running it with him more in the 2-minute drill. He's catching the ball out of the backfield, more often than he did last year, and he's just a big play waiting to happen, and he's a nightmare on opposing defenses. If you're in dime, you have a linebacker or a safety on him, or if you're in base, you definitely have your third best linebacker on him. So it's one of those things. The Colts are doing a really good job of scheming up for Nyheim Hines to take some pressure off of Carson Wentz, especially in 2-minute drills. But yeah, they're doing a good job of getting him the ball more often than they did in his first 3 years. And I think it's going to be a staple going forward because he just signed a big extension right before the season. And so he's going to be a Colt here for the foreseeable future through 2024.
Hey, last thing, have you gotten to see the Peyton and Eli show on Monday nights?
I have. I haven't sat down and watched an entire broadcast, but just kind of snippets here and there. And it's exactly what I thought it would be. It's fantastic. I mean, it's just guys talking intelligent football. I'm learning stuff, but also at the same time, they're not talking over my head. You know, they're sharing stories. They're bringing up anecdotes. You know, they're reminiscing. They're going down memory lane. The guests have been great. So it's just like watching football at the bar stool there at Eagle Point, Jim, right? Where you're at the bar just kind of watching a game with your buddies. That's exactly how I feel watching that broadcast. And so whenever that's available, I know it's not going to be available for the next couple of weeks. They're kind of taking a hiatus. But when it comes back, I mean, if that's available, I'm watching that over the traditional broadcast.
Oh, me too. Yeah. You got Eli giving the double bird the other
night. How about that, right?
And Peyton was egging him on, and that's actually illegal. They can't do that. And they couldn't get it blurred out quick enough. So, but here's Peyton egging him on. That's what's funny, and I can see that as growing up, those two brothers, him getting him in trouble, and it's just the same thing.
No, it's great. It really is. It's a great dynamic, and you know, I love how it's just so laid back. They're just sitting there in their lounge chairs, and they're breaking down, hey, third down here, what do you see? You know, the linebacker did this, or the safety's going to come over here and roll over there and take this guy. I mean, again, I'm learning about football, and, you know, being around Peyton, you know, I covered those teams in the late 2000s, early 2010s. And so, you know, he was just so much more guarded then. He was still a player, and he was still in the weekly prep, and he had tunnel vision. And so, you know, he was always a great interview and a good soundbite, but he's obviously way more open now and showing way more personality now. And it's great to see this side of Peyton, because not many guys can do that, because he's got to be entertaining on the fly for, you know, 3+ hours. And he's got to be, you know, talking and sharing stories and taking direction from the producer and the director in his ear. That's not an easy thing to do.
And watching football.
And watching football and putting the game into perspective as well. And, you know, sharing nuggets on the teams. And he's still doing prep for these games like he's coaching or playing. So it's fantastic. And I love it. I really do.
Unfortunately, the break that they're taking will include the Colts game. So he will not be doing the Colts game. I'm sure that was not an accident. But, man, I know we got to get you out of here. Appreciate you so much. Look forward to it. Good luck on Sunday, and we'll be looking forward to talking to you next week.
All right, guys. Thanks. I appreciate it.
You bet. The great Matt Taylor joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We're back with more right after this. Brought to you by the great folks at Andy Moore Honda. If you're in the market for a new car, Andy Moore Honda has the deals for you. You get a brand new 2021-2022 Honda Pilot with all the trims. You got 0% APR financing on 48 months and $0 down. Or how about a new 2021 Honda Passport? Also 0% APR financing and $0 down. Get more to your door with AndyMooreHonda.com. Go see the guys at Andy Moore Honda and tell them you heard it here. You'll be going to an IU basketball game. If you buy a new vehicle from Andy Moore Honda, and you tell them Indiana Sports Beat sent you, you'll get a pair of tickets to an Indiana basketball game. Back with more after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant. Whether you're looking...
Nice little promo, free tickets if you get a car.
I just made that up.
You just made that up just now?
Yep.
All games have been sold out.
I got access.
I'm sure you do. I didn't know if you had talked about that before.
I have not. I thought it makes a nice little addition. Hey, got to support these sponsors, people. That's how we do this.
No, I'm ready for a nap.
I took one yesterday. It's always good in the moment, but it's always hard to get up from.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've actually taken a nap. I mean,
it had been a while for me too. I had just yesterday morning, I was telling Jim that I have a mid-afternoon lull around 2:00 sometimes, and that's usually when I drink coffee. I didn't do that yesterday, and I ended up taking a nap.
Yeah, I guess I should take that back. When I was sick a couple weeks ago, I slept all day, but I don't remember the last time I took a nap when I was not sick, when a non-sick nap.
I did it a bunch during the pandemic.
There are a bunch of
easy to.
There are probably a bunch of parents of little children that are like going to throw their computer out the door talking about napping.
Here's a couple of tidbits for you. We'll talk about Sage Steele, forced to get her vaccination or lose her job at ESPN. She didn't want to get it.
I'm surprised. Not that I know her, obviously, but she didn't seem like somebody who would have been an anti-vaxxer.
Former Olympic swimmer Cleet Kelter gets a plea deal for the insurrection at the Capitol. He's won 5 Olympic medals.
Wow.
5.
I don't watch the news, so I don't know any of this stuff.
I used to follow a big politics thing on Twitter, but I haven't looked at it in like 3 weeks.
I've gone
without looking at it.
I don't turn on the TV until Saturday usually.
All right, here we go.
Number 1 Honda dealer.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by RE/MAX Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you, brought to you by RE/MAX. This segment, Cheryl Sizemore. If you're looking for a home in the Indy area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Advanced Realty. Cheryl's over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in you getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at 317-298-0961. That's 317-298-0961. Or Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com. Let's see. Some tidbits in the news. Former Olympic swimmer, was it Cleet Kelter? I think he completed a plea deal for the insurrection at the Capitol. Cleet Keller. Yeah, he won 5. He pleads guilty. He won 5 Olympic medals, man. It's like these people just went nuts. Olympic gold medalist Cleet Keller, this is from CNN, pleaded guilty Wednesday to a felony charge of obstructing the Electoral College proceedings, and in a surprise move, plans to cooperate with the Justice Department and potentially testify against other alleged rioters. The deal with Keller suggests prosecutors might try to use him as a star witness at an upcoming trial, banking on his notoriety as a decorated athlete who won gold medals in swimming at the 2008 Beijing Olympics and the 2004 Athens Olympics. He was arrested in January and charged with 7 crimes. Man. And there's the funny thing that I read. Not only did these people go crazy, I think they just went stupid. Stone stupid. The reason investigators identified Keller after he was spotted in video footage inside the Capitol wearing his U.S. Olympic team jacket, and by his height, because he is 6'6" and he towered over the other rioters in the footage. Prosecutors said Wednesday, making it very easy to trace his movements and to identify him.
Well, there you go. I mean, I don't have a comment other than I think that I'm going to keep it to myself because I don't need it to go public.
With Cleet Keller? Well,
no, I think a lot of people have gone crazy, and it's not just one side. But that's
no, I agree with that. No, I'm just saying. I don't care. I don't care what side of the people are on. That's nuts when you do that kind of stuff.
It is. Yeah, I agree.
But but this is what gets me. It's the range of people that went freaking nuts.
It is
I mean, there are lines, people.
You
just can't cross. I don't care what your opinion is. You just can't cross.
Notice how quickly they put up a fence around the Capitol, but we continue to have school shootings and nobody does anything about that. So anyway,
there you go.
Carry on. I have a lot of thoughts on that.
All right. So also, IU grad, Indianapolis native, Sage Steele, forced to get her vaccination at ESPN or lose her job. She acknowledged on a podcast that she did not want to get it, but that she didn't have a choice and got it.
Yep. I don't.
Now, if there's no fallout, I mean, if nothing happens.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know where people stand on it. To me, if that's the company policy and you got to make a decision, I don't care one way or another, to be quite honest. I'm not going to get into the ethics of different things, but I mean, she did what she needed to do. And if she did it or if she didn't do it, whatever. I mean, it's crazy the amount of argument we like to have over this kind of stuff. And the thing to me is,
the funny thing is, half the time the people arguing don't know what they're talking about, or don't really have a fight. And it cracks me up when people complain about things. I'm like, and how's that affecting you?
Right. Yes, exactly. That's number one. Number two is it's impossible to go. I've talked with people. I've talked with a lot of people. And there's varying degrees of what's healthy for one person is not healthy for the other person. What's safe for one person is not safe for the other person. So this is why I stay out of that, because I know a lot of people who have received different medical information, and to try to pretend to play doctor with some of these people, I don't understand the benefit or whatever. I mean, I understand that these schools, I think there's also a difference between, okay, if I make a decision and this school or this entity isn't going to allow me to in based on my decision, that's a decision you're going to have to live with. But I also think we cannot be critical and hate everybody based on what they choose to do with their lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Enough of that stuff. That's just going all day long. What else is shaking in the world of Big Ten football, man?
And this is a fun week. This is a fun week when we're talking about Big Ten football. Well, Michigan, Wisconsin. Yeah. Oh God, I hate that so much. Do you? Well, okay. Where do you stand on Friday night?
I said that this week. I'm like, you know what? Why don't, if they have to have Friday games, wait until toward the end of the season when most of the high school games have probably ended, and you can still have a Friday game if you have to have a damn Friday game.
See, I like here's where I stand on this. I like the Friday game at the beginning of the season when it's week one and you get, Wednesday through Monday or however that shakes out, and you get 6 straight days of football. And then I like the end of the season. I like the Black Friday games. The Iowa-Nebraska game is always a lot of fun. The Egg Bowl is actually on Thanksgiving. So I like those. But the Friday night throughout the season, if I was a fan, maybe I would like it. But for guys like us, Jim, that work, it's like being called into work on Sunday night. It's a little bit different perspective for us. So I don't like it. Mike Loxley threw a fit about it. He said that, Maryland's still the new kids on the block, and maybe sometime they'll get full membership so they won't have to do it. They've had to play 2 Friday night games in a 3-week span, both of them conference games.
Now, see, there is no way that the Big Ten can tell me that they don't do that scheduling is not done that way.
Bingo.
All right, right along with that, and I don't want to sound like a daggone. It's just because I happen to have this information about Indiana. Indiana has played 3 season opening conference games, 2 in the last 4 or 5 years, and then they have another one coming in a couple of years. That'll be 3 in like a 5-6 year span.
Yep.
When they played Iowa this year, that was Iowa's first since 1979.
Yep.
So
and
there's
look at how many Friday night games Ohio State has played.
no secret. I mean,
Michigan 0. I mean, that's the thing that bugs me. If the thing that really bugs me, I mean, we can get into the semantics about it, but at the same time, if you're going to do this Friday night thing, make it a level playing field. Now they're never going to do that because the money and Ohio State's going to draw a crowd on Saturday, no matter who they're playing. But to have Maryland play 2 Friday night games in one season, last year I think Minnesota was slotted in the Friday night slot, like they were almost a permanent resident in that slot. I think they played 2 or 3 games in an 8 or 9 game season. So I just want to see if you're going to continue to sort of fairness or mix it up at least a little bit. It's crazy to me that they're doing this, and especially like I said, Maryland to play 2 conference Friday night games in a 3-week span. Think of how much of a disadvantage that is in terms of your preparation and your ability to get back and prepare for the next opponent. It doesn't seem quite fair to me, but I mean, nobody asked.
Just to clarify, Indiana will start next season against Northwestern at home. So back-to-back years with the conference opponents.
How is that freaking possible?
At least it's Northwestern. That's all I got to say about it.
I get it, but and that is lucky. That's okay, but that's the 3rd time in a short span.
It'll be
Northwestern's one in 40 freaking years.
This will be Northwestern's 3rd or 4th too, because they played Purdue a few years ago. Then they played Michigan State this year. So this will be another Big Ten opener for them.
Iowa takes on Maryland tonight. Or is it tomorrow night?
Friday night.
Yeah, tomorrow night. Today's Wednesday.
Today's Thursday.
Okay, well, you're messing with my head, man. Both teams are 4-0.
Yeah.
And Iowa, to me, is a legit top 5 team.
Yes.
I'd like to see a little more offense from them, but they don't make a lot of mistakes. So and their defense is really good, so that makes them good. Maryland, man, with Tunga Vailoa. Maryland's Iowa going on the road. That they went to Iowa City and it didn't bother them a bit. So I don't think going into College Park or whatever it is where they play that there's not going to be much of a daunting crowd there for them. They're used to that,
right?
But they're only a 3.5 point favorite.
Yeah, this is going to be a really interesting game because this is best on best. This is Maryland's pass offense is the best in the Big Ten. Tunga Vailoa has thrown 10 or 11 touchdown passes. Either way, he leads the Big Ten in that category. Iowa has 6 interceptions. They're the best of the Big Ten in that category. So to me, it's going to be very interesting. Now, Maryland's offense is a little bit different from Indiana's in the sense that they have an extension of the run game, a little kind of similar to Penn State. They get the ball to their playmakers. They get the ball out of the hands of Tunga Vailoa pretty quickly. Then they can stretch the field. So it's going to be interesting for me to see if Maryland throws the ball a little bit different than Indiana does. So, but at the same time, they're going to have to establish some sort of run game because if you can't, as we saw in that Indiana game, Iowa, that secondary can sit back, feast, and pick off some passes and maybe turn them into points. So this is a fascinating matchup. I almost have to issue a public apology to Mike Loxley because I was not high on the Terrapins coming into this season, and they have exceeded expectations at 4-0. They've looked dominant in really all but one game, that being the Illinois game when they had to come from behind. But Illinois lost 3 of their conference games by a possession. So it's not like even though they're 1-4, it's not like they're horrible. It's going to be a really, really fun matchup. So I guess if you want to look at the one benefit of a Friday night game, it's that you're going to get a really, really good, or you should get a really good matchup in College Park on Friday.
Well, I can tell you 2 games that won't be a good matchup, and that's Charlotte 49ers at Illinois. Yep. Even though Charlotte is well, you know what? Charlotte, my brother used to be the head of security for them, and I think he's still with them a little bit, but they may beat Illinois. Illinois hasn't won since they beat Nebraska.
Isn't that something?
And if they hadn't caught Nebraska in the first game, I don't think they would have won that game.
I agree with you now. Yep.
So Illinois is an 11-point favorite.
Charlotte upset Duke.
I wouldn't be afraid to take Charlotte in that game and the 11 points.
Yeah, exactly. Charlotte upset Duke. Duke put a hurting on Northwestern. I mean, I think Illinois will probably win that game, but I don't think it's going to be comfortable. I don't think it's going to be a 2-touchdown game.
We'll have to squeeze some more of these in later, but also Western Kentucky is a 10.5-point underdog at Michigan State. Here's one for you. Nebraska is an 11.5-point favorite at home against Northwestern. Last year's Big Ten West champion.
Yep. And the reason I would stay away from that line is because the last 4 seasons, those two teams, the game hasn't exceeded an 8-point difference. So better beware on that one, because those two teams usually it comes down to the wire.
Ohio State. All right, here's the respect Indiana. Last year, they were a 3-touchdown underdog going into Ohio State. Ohio State traveling to Rutgers is only a 15-point favorite. We got to take a break. More Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming up right after this. Brought to you by Aurora Specialty Sleep Clinic. We'll be back with that right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Hey, Hoosier fans. Our day is now complete.
What's up, guys?
Chris Denari is
Hey,
with
Chris.
us.
How you doing?
How are you, sir?
Good. Very good. Had a nice trip to North Carolina last week.
I was
Blue Ridge
Matt,
Mountains.
That's right.
I finally put envelopes in the mail. It only took me 3 weeks.
Oh, that's fine. No problem. I tell you what, it's been nice to be able to go to practice. Wow, it's been awesome.
Yeah, the only thing that sucked is, and I wish, well, nobody gives a crap, but like Monday sucked for us. I have to do my show at the football complex because their pressers, Monday pressers, used to start at noon. Well, they moved them to 11.
Oh,
so to be there, I've got to do it there to be there in time. Then after that, we had IU basketball media day last Monday, and I wanted to go to Pacers, but I'm like, too much in the same daggone day. I'm like, daggone it.
What do you think, IU Penn State this weekend? That's going to be a tough one.
Yeah. The spread went from 10 to 12.5 because I'm sure a bunch of people dumped a bunch of money on Penn State.
Yeah.
I'd still take Penn State in that game if I was a betting person.
If I was betting it, yeah, from what I've seen.
What did I say?
Proves
what did I say on the podcast, John? 38-10, Penn State.
Yeah, you said 38-10. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna. I think it's gonna be ugly.
And then Elton said he was similar. He said
31-17. He gave it a little bit closer.
I went
say
with
that
28-21.
I don't see him being held to 10 points.
Well, we said that about that against Iowa too. I
think people are still overreacting about the Iowa game. I realize that they got their behinds kicked, but I still think that's an overreaction for what happened there.
You know, it's not an overreaction turning the ball over in the red zone every time they get it in there.
Hey, it was game one. It's over now. We'll see what happens with Penn State.
They did it against Cincinnati too. I'm fired up.
They were in that game though. They were in that game with Cincinnati. They shot their own selves in the
Restaurants, professionals in the art of food and drink. This segment is brought to you by Sam's Family of Restaurants. Fresh, local, family. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurants.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat on this Thursday. Chris Denari from the Indiana Pacers join us. Had media day this week, Chris. It's a busy week. Media days all over the place Monday for IU basketball and the Pacers as well. Got to see. It's just, and just like for you, it was great for us to actually talk to players face to face for the first time in 2 years, and to make eye contact with them from even just 6 feet away or whatever. It makes a huge difference.
Oh, no question. For us on Monday, it was media day, as you said, which was great just to be there, be around the players. And then I've been at practice the last 2 days. So that's something that I haven't done since March of 2020. The Pacers had their first practice on Tuesday morning. And then the Pacers also had their foundation golf outing that day. So I was out at the golf course early to MC, went to practice, came back, MC'd the back end of it. And a number of the players came out, which was really good for the corporate partners and the sponsors and those people that support the Indiana Pacers. And then yesterday was day 2 of practice. They'll go again today. Unfortunately, I won't go down because at noon today, we have the next 2 days, we have NBA broadcast meetings via Zoom, 5.5 hours today, and I think 3 hours tomorrow. So it's something that in the past, we would go to New York City and all of us would meet for a couple of days. But this year we're going to do it, virtually. So, the next 2 days are important days for us from a broadcast standpoint as we get ready for the season. I anticipate that Rick Carlisle I think they'll take tomorrow off and then go back Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then their first preseason game is next Tuesday. So, it happens fast, but these guys are in really good shape. I've been very impressed. I said something yesterday to our basketball people, and I said, I wish people could actually see these practices, how hard they play, because, so many people who aren't, and I'm going to use the word, aren't educated about the NBA think, these guys don't play any defense, they don't play hard. I'm telling you what, if you would have watched the last 2 days of practice, you would absolutely change your mind. And so, it's been good to be there. But a lot of the guys came in about 2 weeks ago. And in fact, the week prior, last week, the entire team was in on their own. And they played every day, went out to dinner. So I think those things are the important things that you're trying to do, also with what's happening on the floor.
I think to your point about the no playing defense, everybody looks at, if you're a casual fan or whatever, you just look at the final score, 122, 124. These guys are in the league for a reason. They can shoot the ball. They know how to get to the basket. It's one of my biggest pet peeves when I hear people say there's no defense in the NBA. And I'm like, here's a ticket to a courtside game. See how hard they're actually playing. But because of the way the media days falls, it's in the thick of the Big Ten season. I didn't get to watch or hear as much, so I kind of got the Cliff Notes version. But one thing we talked about, Chris, in the past has been this team needing a leader. And I thought it was good to hear Malcolm Brogdon say, we need a leader, and that's going to be me. So for somebody to take on that leadership role, for somebody to embrace it, I think when you look at the Pacers and how they've struggled in the playoffs, how they had their ups and downs a season ago, to have somebody step up into a leadership role, even as early as media day, I think what is a really good sign for this franchise heading into what we think could be a really good year.
Yeah, Dustin, I think that's important. 2 years ago, his first season, he comes in, Victor Oladipo was here, and it was Victor Oladipo's team, if you will. And even though Victor was, coming back from injury, it's hard to come in and assert yourself as a newcomer when you've not been around a certain group. And then last year was just a bizarre year, right? It's a COVID year. You had a head coach that didn't last the year. They had all kinds of, just issues. And I think that manifested itself on the floor. And so, to a man, and especially starting with, Kevin Pritchard, they've sort of looked at last year and said, hey, that's a mulligan. We hit it out of bounds. We're re-teeing, and we need a restart and a refresh with a brand new coach. And so I think Malcolm has taken it upon himself to assert himself, in a leadership role. He had a majority of the team join him in LA for about 3 or 4 days, where it was not only important to do things on the floor, it was doing things off the floor. It was going out to dinner. A bunch of them. I think in the last 2 weeks, they took the entire team. They went out to Topgolf. So it's just trying to do those things. The other thing that I was going to tell you guys that I really, really liked about practice was Rick Carlisle empowers his assistant coaches. They have voices. They are leading drills. Now, Rick will come in and, say something, and he's leading the charge. But Lloyd Pierce, Ronald Nora, the former Butler point guard, Mike Weiner, Jenny Busick, they're all leading drills. And so I think that's good because there are a lot of head coaches that want to do it all themselves. And I think, that might have been a problem last year. The assistants' voices weren't heard that much. And so that really hurt. That you're not going to have that issue this year. This is a very strong staff. Lloyd Pierce has been an NBA head coach in Atlanta. He was a #1 assistant in Philadelphia. So, again, it's early. I've just seen a couple of practices, but I've been very impressed with what I've watched.
Yeah, and what's something that jumped out at me is both Mike Woodson and Rick Carlisle are both coming in and setting a similar tone with their teams. Defense, very defensive-minded. And I'm like, well, there's a lot of similarities because both coached in the NBA for a long time and know the importance because across all sports, defense is what wins. Defense is what gets you to the winner's circle. So I just find there just seems to be a very similar tone between those two guys.
Well, Dustin made a good point. I mean, especially in the NBA, there are so many talented offensive players. And one of the reasons the scores, if you look at college basketball to the NBA, one reason the score is going to be higher, it's 48 minutes. You've got 8 extra minutes. That's almost another full quarter of play. And so you're right. I mean, I think both those coaches know they've got to be better defensively. Clearly, IU needs to be better defensively than what we've seen. And the Pacers need to get back to where they were 2 years ago when they were a top 5, top 6 defensive team. One of the most interesting things was on day 1 of practice, the first drill they did was free throw blockout. And what Rick was trying to tell his team was, look, we've got to take care of the little things. If we don't build on the little things, then everything else isn't going to matter. So it was that small detail of free throw blockout. The other thing I said, my dad passed away 4 years ago, was my high school coach, longtime coach, and loved defense. He would have loved watching a number of the drills that the Pacers were doing. And it reminded me of my high school days and even my college days at Wabash, where the coach has the basketball, there's 10 guys in the lane and they're circling, right? One group's going to be offense, one group's going to be defense. And the ball goes, guy has to sprint to the baseline and it's 5-on-4 and the guy has to get back, so they can play 5-on-5. Those are old school drills. I mean, old school defensive drills that really are cool to watch.
One of the things, too, that I thought, the past year or so, maybe even extending a little further, has been, the mystery wrapped in an enigma, wrapped in a riddle of playing Domantas Sabonis and Miles Turner. Do you not play them together? And I thought Rick Carlisle's answer to that was pretty interesting. He says that he thought that there were ways that they could stagger them. There's ways they could play on at the same time. So really you're getting the best out of both guys. Do you have any sense of, and maybe this isn't a practice thing and maybe you got more information on it, but do you get a sense of how he's wanting to do that just right now at the early stages of this season?
Well, I think one of the ways you can do that is what he did in Dallas with Dirk Nowitzki back in the day, especially as Dirk got older. Dirk would start and Dirk would maybe play the first 5 minutes, maybe 6 minutes. And at the 6-minute mark, Rick would make a substitution. Because if you remember, they would start the two bigs. They'd start like Dwight Powell, back in the day, Tyson Chandler with Dirk. And then they would make that first substitution and Dirk would go out. And then when Dirk would come back in, either at the start of the second quarter or whatever, he'd replace the center. And I think those are the things that you can be creative with how you manage them. Absolutely, do you want them to play together? But you also, are going to need to go small at times. Now, the Pacers, as people are watching and listening, have some injury issues. TJ Warren is out. We don't know when he'll be back. And then we got the news Karis LeVert is out with some type of back injury. They ironically, media day was Monday, and they did not get. I think the scan was in the afternoon. He had been having, I guess, some discomfort, but nothing that was super bothersome because he was still working out and playing 5-on-5. Well, that didn't come back until they went to dinner on Monday night. And so they've opted for a second opinion, and they'll just need to see what's up. But I think the good news is there is some depth there. I mean, moving in, Jeremy Lamb is healthy. Justin Holiday. I've been really impressed with Duarte and Isaiah Jackson. I mean, they've got Isaiah Jackson on the second team right now. So I think back to your point, Dustin, I think the way you manage those big guys is they're going to play together, but you can also stagger them. And Rick is very creative in how he manages his personnel. And so I think that's something that we'll look to see. And it will be, ever evolving. I think, in the next week, the 2 preseason games, who knows what you're going to see because you're going to play, the 17th and 18th guy because you want to give them some time. But we'll see as the season goes on.
And one of the big things that came out was Karis LeVert, of course, and the stress fracture in his back, which obviously is going to hamper him, and that has to heal. And they'd certainly like to have him at the start of the season, but that's not going to be how it is.
Yeah, I guess the good news is it's now, and it's not December or January when you're in the thick of the season. Right. So we'll just have to wait and see. He after practice on Tuesday, the good news is he was out shooting, so he is able to do some things. He's able to condition. I think we're all just waiting, for more information. But I'll give the Pacers a lot of credit, and I talked to them yesterday. On Tuesday, when a player is injured and sits out of practice, he does not have to meet with the media. I mean, that's just sort of how it goes. And they put him front and center, talking about it and those types of things. So I thought that was really good, is that, the Pacers didn't run away from it. I know they were surprised, by the report they got. They thought there would be an issue there, and we'll just have to wait and see as we move along here over the next week or so, just how serious it is.
One of the things that I think I've been, excited about in terms of Rick Carlisle taking over this team is obviously he's got the championship pedigree. He's been doing this a long time. He's got ties to Indiana. But the thing that I've always been encouraged by, and I've probably talked about this multiple times on the show, is his willingness to say, I'm not creating a scheme and having players play to it, or a style and having players play to it. I want to play to their strengths. And so I think that goes a long way. And we talk about some of the moves that were made, bringing in Chris Duarte from the draft and Isaiah Jackson from the draft, and you lose Doug McDermott. Do you think that with some of these injuries that we've seen in some of these early season, is Chris Duarte, in your opinion, or what you've seen, is he going to get some early playing time and an opportunity to have a significant role with this team?
I think he's definitely a rotation player, no question. He can really shoot the ball, and they've been really, really impressed with his defense. And that's what he was well known for at Oregon. Mm-hmm. He was a pretty high-level collegiate defensive player. Isaiah Jackson, the same. Isaiah Jackson made a couple of plays yesterday. On one end, he blocked a shot, swiped it off, knocked it off the backboard, came down. They got him the ball to pick and roll, and he made a 2-dribble move to the left and pulled up for a 17-foot jumper and splashed it. And I was like, wow, this guy can do that. So Duarte has shot the ball very well. He may be the best pure shooter on the team as a rookie. So I think I would not be surprised to see those two guys get a lot of opportunity early on. I mean, we weren't sure about Isaiah Jackson. He's a little bit more raw. He's 19, Duarte's 24. But what I've seen with Jackson, I think they'll throw him out there in some situations and see what he can do.
Well, man, I appreciate you as always. What's coming up next for you this week? Besides you preparing for the meetings, 5 hour on a Zoom call. That's a long time to be on a Zoom call, man.
Well, that's the thing. You can get up and go to the refrigerator.
Put the picture up. You can put your picture up like you're still there.
Yeah.
Take off and lay there. You're going to be sitting there watching that in your underwear.
I mean, the big takeaways tomorrow. Tomorrow is an important day because we have about 45 minutes where all the play-by-play guys, you go into different rooms, if you will, analysts, play-by-play, radio, sideline, all that kind of stuff. And then tomorrow, I think it's also an hour Q&A with Adam Silver. So that'll be good. A lot will be talked today, I'm sure, about how different teams are doing games. I mean, for the most part, I would say early on, it sounds like we won't travel early, but hopefully we'll travel as the season progresses. And I'm fine with that from the standpoint that we were able to do games that way last year. I think we did them very well. And the fact that we're now at practice, we're at practice, we're around the team. If you got to take some baby steps to get where you need to go, I'm fine with that. So, but we'll learn more. That's what these next 2 days are all about. And, the season's here. So, my days now, and I love it. I get to go down and watch practice and come home and, again, start the preparation for another year.
Perfect, man. We appreciate you, Chris. Looking forward to it next week. Chris
All
Denari.
right. Thanks, guys.
The voice of the Indiana Pacers. We're back with Jason Stahl, the director of the College Football Players Association after this. And after yesterday's striking memo from the National Labor Relations Board that student athletes are, in essence, employees. So looking forward to talking to him about that and what all the College Football Players Association is working on. Before I forget, Chris Denari is brought to you by Psalms Family Restaurants. Don't forget. Make sure you visit one of the Psalms many locations around the Indianapolis area and as well here at the golf club at Eagle Point as well. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant. Whether you're looking for...
He joined a second ago, but he dropped down to check and make sure he's good.
That. Southern Stone needs to come up with a song off of the because I can't get it out of my head every time I say Southern Stone. Neil Young song, Southern Man. Southern Stone is a great restaurant and it has good food.
Oh my.
Well, I can't remember how that song goes.
I would never go to that restaurant if that was the jingle.
You can't say that.
You know what jingle I really like is the Menards. I love that jingle.
Hey, why don't you check with our guy?
I did check with our guy, excuse me.
What did he say?
I'm waiting to hear back from him.
Man, he was right there.
Maybe he was trying to fix his camera because he didn't have his camera on.
Oh. Looked like it was on.
No, it wasn't. It was a little bubble. Unless you saw something that I didn't see. If we come back before he gets back on, I'll shoot him a call and see if he's having trouble. Oh, here he is.
Hey, Jason.
Hey, sorry, I'm having trouble here at the link, but now I'm on a different computer. I think we're good to go.
Sweet.
I'm Jim Coyle and got Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition as well.
Hey, sweet, guys. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
How's it going?
You bet. How much time we got, John?
Let's see. We'll be back in less than a minute.
Okay. So quickly, you're the director, right?
Yes, that's right. Yep. Executive director. Founder.
Right.
Yep.
I'm going to save the rest of the questions.
I'm from Indiana. I'm
No
glad you guys. Yeah, so I grew up in Northwest Indiana.
The region.
The region, you got it. Born in Crown Point and lived there for the first 14 years of my life. Then on to Chesterton, And then I went to IU. IU is where my bachelor's degree is from.
Oh,
so when you guys reached out, I was like, I definitely want to be doing a Indiana show.
Perfect. Here we go. We got about 5 seconds left.
It's at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday, brought to you by Southern Stone Restaurants. Whether it's a celebration or just a relaxing night away from the kitchen, try something fresh and new. Southern Stone Restaurant, located at the corner of Rogers and Patterson in Bloomington. Open for lunch and dinner, Southern Stone offers comfort food with a Southern charm. Enjoy the outdoor patio or inside with a view. Southern Stone has incredible food, knowledgeable bartenders, and you can catch the IU football and basketball coaches shows there each week at Southern Stone Restaurant. Joined now by Jason Stahl, the founder, director, creator of the College Football Players Association, and an IU graduate, no less.
That's correct. That is correct.
How are you doing, man? Thanks a lot for coming on. Appreciate you.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
You bet. Dustin Schutte from College Saturday Tradition with me as well. Big news yesterday with the memo from the General Counsel of the National Labor Relations Board. We talked a little bit about this earlier, but in essence now, they're saying the college athletes are employees.
Yeah, I mean, so is guidance, right? I mean, this is great news, right? She's basically suggesting, look, for the purposes of the National Labor Relations Board, she is, if any cases come her way, right? If any sort of adjudication comes her way where she needs to think about a case that involves college athletes and whether they want to be classified as employees, whether they want to unionize, etc., that is her guidance, that she will then assume these are employees that we're dealing with and not, quote unquote, student athletes. Okay. This is a big deal. Don't get me wrong. Right. But it does not have the force of law. Okay. This is someone who's in charge of who is sort of setting her opinion, how she and the board will take on such cases should they get to the Washington level. Right. Because there's several local labor relations boards as well, right? And so she is saying this is what happens at the national level. This is my guidance. It's great news, but from my perspective, we still got a very, very long road ahead of us, right? In terms of thinking about how do we get from point, despite this great news from this memo, there's still a long road ahead to get from point A to point B, where you've got a mass of college athletes, whether it's on a football team, let's say, that's obviously what we're most concerned with, or on a men's basketball team, who get classified as employees and then take that next step to unionize, right? This is great news. But, when you watch, from my perspective, I'll be writing about this for tomorrow, but from my perspective, when I see kind of Twitter blow up yesterday among sort of athletics reform people that I'm kind of networked in with, right? My inclination is always to say, well, let's slow down here a little bit, right? Let's make sure that we sort of properly situate what happens and properly kind of situate for college athletes the long road that is still ahead of us here, despite the good news of this memo.
And Jason, one of the things I kind of want to go back to, and maybe this is going in a different direction. I'm not nearly as smart and as intelligent as you are. So my question is, Minnesota running back Muhammad Ibrahim at Big Ten Media Days was asked, is a 15 or 16 game season for a college football player too much if they expand this playoff and go to 12 teams and you eventually get to basically an NFL schedule? And his response stuck out to me. He said, for amateurs, yes, but maybe if you start paying us, no. So it was an interesting response that he gave, and I think some people at Buckeye Scoop asked the question, and we're getting different responses from different players. But my question to you is, I mean, I know that you said there's a long way to go. Do you see that there's getting to the point where right now we have the NIL where the schools aren't paying the student athletes? They're getting it from endorsement deals. They're getting it from autograph sessions and these different opportunities and advertisement. Do you see us getting to a point, or is the ball starting to roll towards the direction of the schools actually having to compensate student athletes directly?
Boy, it's a great kind of couple questions there, Dustin. I had not seen that quote by Mo. So let's tackle these kind of separately here. Okay. So I think that we're talking about college football expansion. This is where I try to make the difference because look, we're a players association here. Okay. At some point, if individual football teams or entire conferences or whatever the case may be, the football level want to unionize, if the players make the decision that they want to unionize, we will be ready to go. Okay. I mean, we'll have the funds, we'll have the support structure in place to make that a reality if that is what members want. Okay. So as we get down the road, if players are very much suggesting, if membership is very much suggesting that that's what they want to try to do, that they want to move in the route of employee classification, pay for play, and unionization, we're going to be all in for that. Right. But Mo's answer to that question really gets to the heart of a players association can do so much more before we get to those points, right? Mm-hmm. College football playoff expansion is such a key issue where I think we can really show here, and I think we will show soon, that we can make an entrance into, we can be the collective voice of college football players nationwide before we get to those things like employee classification, unionization, collective bargaining, right? Mm-hmm. We can demand the players, our members can demand that they be included in these conversations because Mohammed's exactly right that it is going to be very debatable, right? And I think he's right. I think if you look nationwide, if you look guys I've talked to, I mean, the idea that we're going to push more games onto these quote unquote student athletes, right? When they're in the midst of finals, I was a teacher of these guys for, a decade, right? The demands on their lives to just say, oh yeah, we're just going to go ahead and do this without even consulting them, right? Well, the consultation can happen. The collective voice of the players involved in the conversation, that can happen before we even get to these bigger issues of pay for play and so forth. And I could see players using that collective voice coming down exactly where Mo came down, which is to say, no, not until we're employees, not until pay for play do we do something like this, right? Not until we get some sort of share of these billions that you're going to make from expanding the playoffs, right? But yeah, I think this is why I say there's this long lead up here where we can show the power of a players association before we even get to those things.
Jay, why you? How did you decide and want to pick up this torch and run with it and do what all is needed to be done and all of that? Where did that impetus come from to do that?
Yeah, it's a fair question, Jim, because I think that, how I got involved in this, if you had told me 10 years that I'd be here talking with you about this, 10 years later, I would not have believed you, right? 10 years ago. And, I was a professor at the University of Minnesota, right? I'm trained as a historian. I am interested in the history of labor and work. This is very much what I've studied. I've been a union activist in my life. I've been a political activist and organizer in my life. So I think I have the life experience that kind of sort of points to something like this, right? But like 15 years ago, I didn't really watch college football games, to be totally honest with you. It just wasn't in my wheelhouse. All right. So for me, this really changed behind the scenes, the decade from 2010 to 2020. I had thousands of students. Of those thousands of students, I had hundreds of student athletes, right? Because of my situation at the University of Minnesota. Of those, I probably had 60 to 70 football players. And I just honestly took an interest in their lives. You see their lives behind the scenes, man. You get the reality of what this is like. It's not just about being out there on Saturday and big men on campus and whatever else. I mean, the struggles that these guys go through to balance, the demands on their time and on their lives are just intense. And about 2015, I talked with enough guys where I was like, I want to make this my second book. I want to write about the realities of the lives of college football players, right, that people don't know about. And I want to try to reform things if I can, because, for instance, like for me, I really entered into this thinking my big focus in 2015 was they weren't getting the education that they were promised. Like the only payment some of these guys get is that scholarship, right? And I'm not going to say like it is like, I went into debt to go through my college education, and lots of people I know go into debt. It is a payment of sorts. All right. I mean, I really do believe that. Yet the payment, quote unquote, had become very, let's put not real, like in terms of they're not getting what they were promised in terms of the type of education that I got as an undergrad, right? Where I really got to kind of dig in and get a real value for my education. So I really became energized about the kind of reforming the academic side of things. All right.
Well, we've got a comment that Senator Burr from North Carolina introduces a bill to make scholarship funds taxable if they make too much from NIL money. Well, what's too much?
I know what's too much. I mean, this is such a terrible idea on its face. I mean, I'm very much in support of NIL. I mean, but we see some of the data coming back on NIL, and it's kind of what you sort of expect going in. There's a lot of big guys who are seeming to rake in a decent amount of NIL bucks, and then there's a lot of scraps on down the line, right? Because 98.4% of college football players don't go on to the NFL, right? So we know that 1.6% that does go on to the NFL, that those are the guys that are going to be getting the most, NIL dollars, right? So, we're going to penalize them. Oh, great here. They make too much money. All right. So we're kind of getting a little bit sidetracked here, but I think that why me? I mean, I really gravitated around 2017 to health and safety concerns. Okay. So for me, what I was seeing behind the scenes at Minnesota is extreme health and safety concerns. I've written a lot about this. People can find me and sort of dig into the kind of stuff I've been seeing and reporting as a professor, trying to raise concerns about health and safety issues. And so for the past 5 years, that's really been where my focus is. And I've been working with lots of players and lots of people where what we're saying here, this is back to Dustin's question earlier, is there so much we can do on the health and safety and welfare front before we get to pay for play? I mean, my God, do people know that from 2000 to 2016, 33 college football players died playing the game? Died. Okay? I mean, 32 of those died in practice. All right? That's the reality of football. And I like football and I like watching football, but man, we can do football better. We can make sure that guys aren't dying in practice, right? I mean, so for me, it's like that's why me, Jim. And I think I've assembled a team and have drawn players into this new organization where we're going to come out here in the fall in a big way and show people that we can make change before we even get to that, the idea of employee classification, unionization, and so forth.
I don't know, Jason, you are with Joshua Perry. He was a former Ohio State linebacker. He now works at Big Ten Network as an analyst, and he does a podcast, a new podcast, kind of about their 2014 national championship run. And one of the things that's interesting to me, you were a former professor, or still are a professor. Sorry, I don't know.
No, I'm not. I'm not,
okay.
Dustin.
Okay. So didn't want to mix up your title there. But one of the things he kind of addressed, and one of the things that he talked about when he was asked what are some of the complexities with being a student athlete, and he said, one of the things I'd kind of like to see changed is sometimes guys have to change their major because of practice schedule. How much of that did you see during your time at Minnesota? And to me, that is a concern for student athletes as a whole, but I think it's also fixable at an institutional level.
Dustin, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, this is exactly what I was talking about earlier. That is so pervasive. So pervasive. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the story of guys coming in and saying, I wanted to be a graphic design major. Or guys telling me like I'm a historian, they would take my history class and they'd be like, man, this is so interesting. Like I want to become a history major. And I would be like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it. Right. Oh no, I can't. I mean, that was such a huge red flag. Wait, you can't become a history major? Really? Like that's what you're telling me? Oh yeah, I mean, practice times, right? Blah, blah, blah. And like, yeah, like a new coach comes in at Minnesota, right? And we have this sort of rearrangement of practice time where in the fall, the reality is guys cannot take classes before 1:30 p.m. in the fall semester. Well, shit, man, that's the bulk time of undergrad classes at basically any institution from 8 in the morning until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then we switch over to grad classes. And so, yes, Josh was dead on right. And like saying, and it's going to be more of a problem at Power 5 schools, right? And especially schools, I would imagine, like Ohio State. I mean, I don't know a ton about Ohio State, so I don't want to suggest it's an institution-wide thing, but I bet it is. And here's the problem, Dustin, is that not only then are they turned away from majors that have value, that I would say have value, right, in the marketplace, if they want to be a business major, if they want to engineering or want to try for something, or just something like a liberal arts major like history, right? No, they get turned into majors. Like we all read what happened at UNC, right? We all know what happened at UNC. Well, let me tell you, folks, at every institution across this land, something like that's happening. And it's an open secret that it's happening. And it's not just happening to student athletes. That's right, Dustin. It's happening to all students. And so it's a problem that needs to be reformed, but can be done so through the student athlete who is uniquely positioned to be tracked into some of those paper majors.
Hey, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk more about how it's going to impact everything with the NIL and all of that's going on, all of the changes for college athletes. Jim Coyle and Dustin Schutte here, and we're joined by Jason Stahl from the College Football Players Association, back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friends at Reynolds Family Dentistry. If you're down in the Sellersburg area, get down to see our friend Dr. J for that championship smile. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Hey, Hoosier fan.
All right, we'll be back in about 3 minutes.
Okay.
I'm out
Good questions, guys.
Awesome.
What's that?
Good questions. This is great.
Perfect. I can't believe you went to IU. That's hilarious.
I know. Yeah, BA from IU. I graduated. Degree.
So why not
2000?
Then, if you're going to run the College Football Players Association, then you have to move back to Indianapolis because that's where every other sports organization is headquartered.
Here's the funny thing, Jim. We were back for my dad's 70th birthday this weekend in Northwest Indiana, right? And we went and had dinner in Crown Point. I was with my girlfriend, and I hadn't been to Crown Point for forever. That was my birthplace, and she and I were saying, she was like, man, we could do the organization here once we get, enough funding to establish
it's got to be in Indianapolis. I mean, that's just it's almost, it has to be.
I told her, it was like, she didn't even realize the NCAA was in Indianapolis. I was like, Indiana's like the headquarters for all
this.
It's
not just the NCAA, Pan American games and USA swimming. I mean, it goes on and on and on. There's like 10.
Yes.
I'm going to a college football championship host committee event tonight.
I mean, I think there's a good chance that we end up there because, parents are getting older, and I think being closer to them would be real nice. There's just tons of stuff to work through, but it is definitely something we're considering for sure.
Cool.
I didn't misspeak either. Mo actually did say that. I have it on I went through my recordings and listened to it.
Okay, so here's the thing. I'm going to tell you why we're on break. Nobody can hear this, right?
Yes.
Yes, they can.
Okay, then forget it.
Okay, yeah. So we're live on YouTube, but when we're paused during commercial, that's for the radio side of things.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah,
What was it you were going to tell us that
I can say one thing real brief, even if we are live. Mo is a student of mine.
Oh, Mo Abraham, yeah.
And so, but I think I met him way back in 2017. But I think everything that here has gone down in Minnesota with me and other, with the program here, I think I'm not sure where things would stand between me and him at this point. But it's, I think there's been a lot that's happened since 2017. I'll put it that way.
Sure.
All right, I'm going to bring us back in.
That I'll ask in a minute, but what about career-ending injuries?
Oh, I could talk, for 2 hours.
Banking and all the products of big city banks with hometown service.
With First Federal, you can do that.
This segment is brought to you by Aurora Specialty Sleep Clinic. Now back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Looking forward to bringing on a new sponsor, AAA Insurance. Hey, we all need insurance, whether it's home, auto, renters, life insurance, and you need to be insured by someone who cares about you. For those of you in Southwest Indiana, the Evansville area, Southern Illinois area, reach out to our friends at AAA Insurance today for your auto, home, life, and renters insurance needs. 812-477-9966. That's 812-477-9966. AAA Insurance, be covered by someone who cares about you. Back with Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition and Jason Stahl from the College Football Players Association, the founder and director. One of the things that you guys were talking about, Mo Abraham from Minnesota earlier, and not that he's sustained a career-ending injury, season-ending injury, but we start talking about these athletes and if they're going to be employees, is there going to be insurance for those that potentially have a pro career? And this opens just a gigantic Pandora's box with all of this.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the thing, let's sort of pull the lens back from Mo's injury specifically. I think, it doesn't look good. I'm not speaking about him directly as I speak about these things, but just in terms of career-ending injuries, what we would call medical retirements in college football, right? Medical retirements, in my mind, are very much an open scandal right now, just in terms of how many we're dealing with, and then lifelong consequences from medical retirements. These can take on basically two different problems. Problem number one, a guy, Jim, what you're kind of referencing here, a guy who's headed on to the NFL, who, like Mo, okay, Big Ten running back of the year last year, in line for a very good season again, of course, and then sustains this, very awful injury here in game number one against Ohio State. All right, so what the Alston decision this past summer did is sort of, in a very good way, I think, lift the lid off lots of things that could be considered expenses that a program could apply to a college athlete. Okay, and this was good. So things like insurance policies on NFL bound players, right? Should they sustain an injury like this and then not go on to get that NFL payday? Schools can do this. I did an interview with people can look up on our cfbpa.org is our website. Go to the media page. I did an interview with The Guardian a week or two ago where they talked about these insurance policies. And I talked about this is great that the Alston decision can do this, but programs still got to do it. Right. And it's real kind of scattershot whether programs are doing it or not. Well, this is something you could institutionalize before we, or sort of all Power 5 programs offer this to NFL bound players or likely NFL bound players. This is something you can do before you get to employee classification with the Alston decision. All right. Now, this is separate and distinct, though, from medical retirements, career-ending injuries for all college football players, okay? And especially for focusing, again, on the 98.4% that do not go on to play in the NFL. But I talk with, and it's like, I'm a 50-year-old guy who was a walk-on back in college who sustained a career-ending injury, and I'm still 25 years later suffering medical consequences from those injuries. And
yeah, now that's where I'm going to disagree with you, because if you're a walk-on, you know what you're getting into. You don't have a shot. You're out there for the glory of playing. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's kind of like having a hobby that is dangerous.
I struggle mightily with the walk-on issue, Jim, and I don't want to get myself into trouble here because for me personally, I think the labor pool is too large in college football. It's too large, and it's a problem. You look at like a program like they're insanely large right now because of the COVID year last year, right? Yeah. So you got rosters that are 120, 130, 140, 150. No way. Rosters should not be that large. We need to get those roster sizes back towards where they are for the NFL. I mean, I think
that's not going to happen, though.
I know. The thing is, though, is like, man, the walk-ons are so exploitable, Jim. And I think walk-ons go into it, you're right, for the glory. They're 18 years old. They're coming out of high school. They get a chance to walk on in a college team. They don't know what they're in for. And let me tell you what they're in for in a lot of programs. They're tackling dummies. They're battering rams on the practice squads, right? And
but you know that going in. That's
Jim.
Going in. If you play whatever sport you play, you kind of know that.
I mean, I know what you're saying, and I'm not saying they don't know, but you don't know what you don't know. You know what I mean? It's like you can't possibly know what college football is and what being in a Power 5 college football program is until you get in there. And then you're inside the system, Jim. And once you're inside the system, it's hard to step back out and get a sort of outsider's view on the world, which is what I have. And I think you're a fish in water. It's very hard to describe the water once you're like actually in it, right? And so there's,
But I think we're getting away from the actual subject, though, more about how is this actually going to impact college athletes now? We've got NIL now, and there's all that they're going to have to deal with, but keeping track of that taxable income and all that stuff. And are there members? Do you have members of the college? Are there any? Has anyone current players? Do you have members from the current players? How many?
So right now, look, the big thing we're working on right now is we have private members, okay? Because there is a fear of retaliation here, right? And do guys want to necessarily step out and be the ones to like step out and say, yeah, this is what I'm for, right? What I'll say here is we're working on a public campaign. We're working on public members coming forward here this fall to be the public face of the institution, okay? That's all I'll say at this point, in part because this is a plan that is taking a while to put into place here because we know the fear of retaliation is there. There's multiple ways you can retaliate against a college football player who does not receive a paycheck, right? But does receive a scholarship. Scholarships do get pulled. The guys do lose playing time. These are realities, right? And so we want to be careful and we want to protect our guys and we want to be safe about the kind of campaign we're running. To come out publicly with public members. And so, yeah, Jim, you're going to see that. But that's all I can say for right now because, like, we want to make sure here that we are keeping guys protected when they come out as public members. We want to make sure that the campaign we come out with is a very thoughtful campaign that they feel very comfortable coming out in support of and thus in support of the institution.
When we get closer to that, we'll have you back on and talk about that before it comes out. I want to thank you for taking the time to join us today and look forward to getting back with you, man.
Awesome. This has been great, guys. Yeah, I'll come on anytime for sure.
Appreciate you. Jason Stahl, director and founder of the College Football Players Association, joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Appreciate him very much. And let's see, we've got some it was brought to you by Aurora Specialty Sleep Clinic. Do you or does anyone your partner, anyone you hang with, have sleep apnea, snoring? You need to go see our friends at Aurora Specialty Sleep Clinic in Indianapolis. Former dentist and IU basketball players Steve Green and Brian Evans are waiting to help you and your partner get the rest you need. It's a very compact device like a teeth whitening tray. I can personally say it works for me. Aurora Specialty Sleep Clinic is located at 4745 Statesman Drive in Indianapolis, or you can reach them at aurorasleep.com. That thing works, man. I'd go get that. Let's see. We had some Big Ten games that we didn't get to finish. Dustin, let's want to get back to those. Where are those? Oh, yeah. No, that's the wrong one. There we go. Of course, Indiana, Penn State. We'll save the last couple minutes for that one. Kind of a unique game is Western going up to Michigan State, Western Kentucky, since they played Indiana last week. That's just a very interesting game for me. I wish that it wasn't. Well, it has to be someplace, but it's going to be definitely a definite disadvantage for Western being up there in that 80,000 seat environment of Spartan Stadium there. But I'd like to see what how good Michigan's defense. This will show you Michigan's defense right here.
Michigan State.
Michigan State, rather. We will get a good indication of Michigan State's defense here because they stretch you, man. They put it on you. Now they don't have offense for crap. Defense for crap, but that's going to be interesting. What do you think about that game?
Yeah, I think it has kind of a sort of a trap game feel. We saw how Western Kentucky kind of moved the ball, how they challenged Indiana at home. It's going to be tricky for them to go up to East Lansing, but I think when you look at how Michigan State won last week in that thrilling fashion, overtime, they had to fight for 60-plus minutes to get a win against Nebraska, and then next week they travel to Rutgers, which is playing at a really high level right now. They're 3-1, and they played well against Michigan, and they play Ohio State this weekend. So I don't think that Western Kentucky has enough firepower to beat Michigan State, but what I do think could happen is you might see Michigan State get a little sleepy. They might come out of the tunnel and don't look maybe as crisp as they have in these first four games because of what happened last week and then who they have to play next weekend.
And I tell you, I mentioned this earlier, Nebraska hosts Northwestern. Nebraska is 11.5-point favorite. An 11.5-point favorite. That is the craziest thing. Why in the hell would they make Nebraska an 11-point favorite over anybody?
Because of the defense. I don't know.
I think they're going to win the game, but
when you look at, okay, first of all, a lot of this has to do with the name on the front of the jerseys. It's Nebraska and it's Northwestern. People don't care that Northwestern won the Big Ten West. This is all about betting and gambling and all that stuff. But when you legitimately look at how poorly Northwestern's offense is run, they're already on Ryan Helinski, who entered the season their third-string quarterback. They've already moved on to him. They've only been able to run the football against Indiana State and Ohio last week. Northwestern's offense, it looks bad. So when you pair that up with how well Nebraska's defense has played, I just don't know how. I have concerns that Northwestern's going to get the ball on their side of the 50. So to me, I understand the spread. This game has always been close. It's always been hard fought. So from a historical standpoint, I can't take Nebraska and the points in this one, but I can understand how you get to that line when you throw in the jersey, when you throw in the defense that Nebraska is playing, and when you look at how bad Northwestern's offense has been.
And then, of course, Indiana traveling to Penn State, where the Nittany Lions are now at 12.5-point favorite, with the over and under only set at 53. So that tells me that they don't expect Indiana to score a lot of points.
No, I would agree with that. Based on what we've seen, Michael Penix did not play well against Iowa. He had 3 turnovers against Cincinnati. Indiana's offense could not capitalize inside the red zone on multiple opportunities against Cincinnati in a game they should have won. And then you go back to Western Kentucky. Yeah, he threw the ball all over the field, but 73, 53, whatever it was, the final number, no touchdowns. I just have some real concerns in the way that Penn State's defense is playing, the way that Sean Clifford is throwing the ball all over the field, the fact that it's a night game at home for Penn State, the fact that you have the revenge factor. I think that's big in Penn State's mind. I just don't see Indiana getting up and down the field against this defense.
That's a big worry. But Michael Penix looked a little more comfortable last week.
You did.
I think that they're obviously know what they're up against, so they're going to have to game plan for what they have. You lose DJ Matthews, so now you've got to make that adjustment. Which that is just a freaky bad loss for Indiana. Golly, I mean, they have the goofiest injuries.
Yep.
But oh well. Yeah, I think it's going to be difficult for Indiana to get the job done there. It's just going to be ABC TV nighttime audience, and I just think Penn State's. I think that Penn State might be the best team in the Big Ten East.
I think so too.
And I just think it's a big ask. I just don't think that they're ready to get that job done offensively. Defensively, I think that they could play toe-to-toe with them, but not without having an offense that can support you like Penn State's offense will support it. That's the difference. What do you got coming up for Saturday Tradition, brother?
I'll have my bold predictions out on Friday as well as my column shooting from the hip. So those are the two things I've got going into this weekend.
Sounds good, brother. Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition. Give him a follow. Appreciate you as always. Of course, a big thanks to everybody else today. Chris Denari, Matt Taylor, and Jason Stahl from the College Football Players Association. Back to do this all again tomorrow. See if we can get scared up for you. Dustin already left. Would you kick him off?
No, he just left. He had to go.
Oh, okay, cool. But appreciate everybody and look forward to doing this again tomorrow. Thank you guys. We can't without you. There's nothing for us, no reason for us to be here. Scott says 38-20 Penn State, unfortunately. I think you may be correct, my friend. Hey, we're back to do this again tomorrow. Thank you so much. Support our sponsors. For everybody, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.